had an experience with Jesus. I have no doubt that's who it was, because on some higher level of understanding, I was made aware of that fact, quite in spite of myself or my doubting nature. I was born Roman Catholic, and even though as a little boy I had a firm faith, very ready faith, as kids are wont to do, over the years, as I grew up, I kind of lost the interest, not only the interest, but just wasn't very important to me to think about religion or whether Jesus is real or not. I was too busy sort of just enjoying or thinking I could enjoy life with all its various temptations and excesses, I suppose. So when this experience happened, I was utterly unprepared for it. But more than that, I was actually I was in a state of distress at the time. So let me just go back a little bit and describe the events leading up to it, and hopefully that'll give a better picture. So anyway, over the years, probably from my late teens, pretty much to about a couple of years ago, I used to dabble in drugs and used to drink quite heavily, as a lot of people in this world do, unfortunately. Which comes a lot of the time comes from the company that you keep, and what sort of a upbringing you had, or whatever influences you tend to gravitate towards. I suppose based on your karma. Whatever the Christian equivalent of that is the seeds that you've sown, which then come back to you in a harvest. So so basically I'd been on a binge drinking session for about 2 days straight at the turn of the new year, and I hadn't drank heavily like that for a couple of years before that, so I considered my days of drinking to be over. But once I imbibed a few, it certainly restored some of that old appreciation for it. So I went hard and basically got pretty inebriated. A lot of the old demons that I thought I'd put away in my mind returned in full vigour, full force. But I didn't realise that fully while I was still drunk. But basically the third day after that, I felt very hungover, extremely hungover. Probably, the most hungover I'd ever felt in my life. And I can't describe to you just how negative and anxious, and it just seemed like all of the demons that I'd ever felt in life had all descended on me in full force during that hangover. There was definitely some kind of a spiritual aspect to it. It wasn't just any old hangover. And basically I just started to get the feeling that, what the hell is this? This can't just be from a couple of days of drinking. This never used to happen so badly to me. But I was hoping that it would go away, like I'd sleep it off or something, eat enough greasy food, take vitamins and minerals, and it would be gone, maybe within a day or two. But that was not to be. I remember trying to sleep that night, that third night, and just as I was falling asleep on the verge, you know, when you have like those, sometimes you have those little dreamlets or like mini visions on the verge of sleep, when you're just on that point of sleep and you see something or you experience something in your mind. I experienced, basically there was a shadow of a man. He walked very, very quickly around the periphery of my awareness, so kind of in like a dream sense. He was there on the edge of my awareness, and I could tell. I only saw his shadow, but I could tell, you know, it was a man, and he emitted this really evil, cackling laughter, like you might hear in a horror movie or something, you know. Just the essence of menace. This apparition was, and he walked very rapidly around from in front of me to my right and behind me, and I just like jumped up, you know, like not in the dream, like physically woke up, startled, and jumped up. It just freaked me the hell out, and I looked around. I was couldn't believe what you know, terrified basically, and of course there was no one there. So I thought, okay, well that must have been like a waking dream. Just as I fell asleep, I had this, you know, maybe it's symbolic of something that I'm going through or whatever psychologically. And so I thought, you know, nothing of it, and then I went to sleep and woke up the next day, and the intensity of the negative feelings and like guilt and all sorts of self recrimination that I'd been feeling the previous day was there in an even stronger sense. And so I just went about the day just completely crestfallen about my existence. But it was like an existential crisis, basically. This is the best way I could describe it. And yeah, I started getting pretty desperate. I was like, you know, how can I resolve this? Do I need to take medication, or should I take a few Valiums or go talk to someone, or, you know, just really trying to figure out how to get out of this hell, this inner hell that I was feeling. So by some stroke of, I suppose you could call it divine intervention now, now that I've been through what happened, I ended up in the church, walked past it, and decided to just some kind of a feeling, like an old feeling of recognition from my childhood. You know, when you remember someone that you knew a long time ago, but you'd completely forgotten about until that moment. That was how I felt about Christ. So I walked into this church, and I sat in the pews. There weren't many people at that point. They were just filing in for the noon service. And I was just desperately trying to hold it together with all this stuff going on in my head. Just sitting there trying to look normal, with sort of bugging out and wondering what all these people were thinking of me, and like it's very uncomfortable. And I just prayed. I just found myself doing it, even quite in spite of myself. And it was just more, it wasn't even words, there weren't even words accompanying the prayer at all. It was just feelings, just shades of feeling extending out from within me. And I started feeling a peace, a very still sort of peace, as if someone had broken like an egg over my head, and the egg was dripping down over my head, like from all directions, from the center of my crown. And so, and I felt like not just, it wasn't just happening to me, but I felt like a presence was descending over the whole, over the whole church, over everyone in it. And there was a priest that was giving the sermon, and I've had a suspicion, of priests, hearing all this stuff about child molestation and, basically all this bad behaviour within the church for like all these years that's been coming out in the media. And there's no hiding it, it does happen. But this priest seemed to be a very sincere and genuine priest. There was something in his voice that you could just tell that he was sincere in his faith and a very pure person. It just came through in his words and in his manner of speaking. He was very inspired. And just a little Indian man, or not sure where he was from exactly, but he was very he really got the message across. And then they came to this point in the sermon where they do the blessing of the host of the Eucharist before giving the wafers to everyone as a symbol of God's flesh, and the wine as a symbol of his blood. And at that moment when they were doing that, the consecration of the host, I had this experience in my consciousness, in my mind, and it was so vivid that if someone was to ask me to describe reality, or what do I feel is real, I would have to say that everything that I've ever felt up to that point in my life was like a dream compared to this feeling, this real feeling of who and what I was to feel in that moment. There was basically I didn't see physically, I didn't see with my physical eyes anyone there. Like, I didn't see Jesus standing there like a man as I see someone before me, in everyday terms. But in my mind's eye, it was like this impression was just stamped on my consciousness of Christ being there in that moment, blessing the host. He'd been, because they invoke Jesus in that moment to do that. And just the power, the unbelievable, the sheer power of this being that was there, It's I just can't describe it. I can't really describe it in words. It was just the impression of light, the impression of this infinite light just pouring from him, just into all directions. And all I can really associate with the feelings that were going through me at that moment in beholding this being and this light that he was emitting is just the words, we're all familiar with them in regards to Jesus, glory, peace, love, mercy, compassion, these are all just words. We get too used to hearing them, and it just that's all they are to most of us, even Christians, just words that we hear all too often, but don't really know the meaning, the essence of them, because we haven't felt them. And I don't think I can honestly say that in my whole life I did not know the meaning of those words, because I had not felt the essence of those words until that moment of witnessing, or that's the Christian terminology of witnessing, or basically seeing Christ, seeing him in that moment right there. And I choked up. I couldn't contain the feelings that were welling up in me from perceiving this within myself. if I had to use another analogy, now that I think of it, is if someone was to hold a diamond up to you, very close to your face, and you could only see one facet of that diamond, imagine that as representing all that you've ever seen life through, or as that one facet. Now all of a sudden, the person holding that diamond, quite outside of your control, it's not you holding it, it's somebody doing it to you, moves that diamond away from your face, and you see all the facets of this diamond. So in terms of consciousness, how that relates to a divine experience, you suddenly see many faces of reality at once, sort of almost like a drug trip in a way, but just beyond anything that I've ever experienced on drugs. And just yeah, it's out of this dimension. It's multi-dimensional. It's definitely like what they say, that consciousness in potential is infinite. You can definitely, in the presence of God, it's what it becomes, because He is that infinite, and that infinity that we're all a reflection of. But you don't see it until you're in His presence, and all those feelings, like having many feelings at once and many perceptions of Him at once, it was just like a supreme glory of this being that is the King of the universe, or whatever. These are all just words and titles that they give Him, but they all have a meaning and a reason, because those are the feelings that you feel automatically welling up in you in His presence, because that is who He is, that is what He is. And yeah, I wish everyone could have been, they were there, but everyone could see what I saw that day. It's beyond my ability to tell. It's like if the Emperor of existence shows up out of the blue in this sudden moment, like a sudden flash of radiance that just blows your mind completely and makes you choke up with awe and revelation, of what He is and who He is, and what is the heart of creation, basically, is in this before you, in this person. And that's why I understood, like, the sun represents the one who is manifesting that omnipresent, unmanifest glory, the light. In other words, the light that He is the Father, but the Son is in the form, the human form, and the Holy Ghost is that all-encompassing presence that He is in as the body, as the Son, but in omnipresence, because He is in every particle of space. He's not just in that body. That's what seeing that light gives you, the awareness of that, the omnipresence of God. Too often we think of Him just as that human form, and that's necessary, because we need that human form to relate to Him. But He is really in His own consciousness. He is everywhere. So He's in you. He's in every particle of space, basically. Every nook and cranny of the universe. He is the universe. And so anyway, if any one of you were to know me, you would know that I don't tell fibs. I don't lie, especially not about this kind of thing. And very sincerely, it was not an act of imagination. I've had plenty of those before, and I know the difference. So yeah, I wish everyone could have this kind of experience, and I think it's waiting. It's there. It's waiting for everyone. All you have to do is really reach out and desire it and ask for it. I had to do it under desperate circumstances, and that's probably why they happened, just so it could be a launching point towards that, towards that meeting. And there were a few things that I heard as well, mentally heard, or mentally in the heart, you could say. I heard with his voice, even though it wasn't like a voice that was vocalized, but more a feeling of words being said. And it said, he said, when I thought of the experience with the shadow and the evil laughing shadow, he said, Satan, he will try you, do not be afraid. Just very simple, one sentence, sort of, within those few words, he basically said everything I needed to hear about that experience. And then he said, because I was feeling guilty, about drinking and having got into that whole state of mind by which I felt I had, allowed Satan to cross the boundaries of my awareness. He said, he basically was saying, don't feel guilty. He said, don't worry, as in don't blame yourself. Don't worry. He has been deceiving everyone since the beginning. So, in regards to sin, I guess the Christian concept of sin, which is so strong in Christianity, the concept of sin, it's basically not. It's outside of our control. In other words, we are not responsible for the original cause of sin. That was something that was divinely ordained, I guess, or it was bound to happen. Basically, it was meant to happen, and it did happen. And all that's really asked of us is to renounce it when it becomes too much for us to handle, to give it to Him, because we are not responsible for the original cause of it. But we so easily get caught up in feeling guilty and shamed and basically allowing it to corrupt our peace, which is the whole reason why Jesus said, just give all your burdens to me, because He's not just a man just that comes and offers you His love and stuff. He's God. That's God Himself in a human form, basically taking away that which you are not in control of, basically either causing in yourself or relinquishing. So all you have control over is how you react to the feelings of sin, of guilt and shame. And the devil, or that force in creation which is ever trying to keep souls from going back to Him, it's basically his job. It's like the work he has. He basically bring on himself to do. Is to. That's all we have control over. Is to basically, not allow those feelings of guilt and shame over our sins to keep us from God. We just have to give them up when the feeling comes over us, to want to relinquish them. And that's what Jesus said. He said, you're not responsible for the original cause of sin, so don't feel guilty. Just give up the feelings of sin, to give up the fruits of it.